Okay, so yesterday I finished watching Ice Queendom, and I've also seen RWBY Justice League Part 2. That video should be coming out Monday, meaning sometime, hopefully next week, I can work on my RWBY season slash spinoff slash trailer tier list. But looking at Ice Queendom specifically, I have a really weird vibe with it. And it's not just because, oh, it's RWBY in a 2D art style and like the production team is different. Although that is part of the weird vibe, but it's something I think is kind of cool. What's weird to me is I was watching it and thinking, this is a really cool idea, and I like what they're doing. I think this idea is actually pretty well executed. But for some reason, I didn't love it. I was just like, oh yeah, this is okay. And this feels like a really weird thing to criticize about a 12-episode anime. It feels too long. An episode of RWBY is as long as it needs to be. Generally speaking, that's about 18 minutes or so. Some episodes go a bit longer, some episodes go a bit shorter. On the short end of the spectrum, which is season 1, you will get sub 10-minute episodes. And then on the higher end of the spectrum, you can get like 24 minutes. I think the longest is about 26 or 27 minutes. But that's not super common. And I honestly like that flexibility. It makes the show feel a lot easier to binge, because if of all the things I've criticized RWBY for, aside from season 1, I don't feel like I've really criticized the pacing that much. Yeah, sometimes the decisions the characters make are a little weird, sometimes the fight might look a little weird, etc., etc. I'm like, but the way the story is paced and it's presented to me, I think is done well. I think they tend to move at a good pace. So watching 12 full-length episodes, there were moments where I was kind of thinking to myself, this is maybe dragging a little bit. Like, I feel it, and maybe it's also just the way they do the concept. So I guess to kind of go into that, there's a new kind of grim in this in this show, which, as I've said in some previous RWBY videos, I think the grim are pretty boring, but when they try to do unique shit with them, I really like it. The apathy from season 6, the weird fucking evolving grim from season 8, the shit in RWBY Justice League 2, and how like they keep changing and evolving and shit, and there's like one with kryptonite on it so Superman can't fight it. That's really cool. So I liked the nightmare a lot. And there was that part of my brain going, okay, I know this was like dead ass made after Cross Tag Battle, but I feel like the RWBY cast was spending way too much time with the Persona cast, because this feels like a Persona plotline. So what the nightmare does is like it infects somebody, it like gets into their heart, and like these like thorns and shit will appear on their body, which I just think is kind of neat. And it essentially, to use a Persona 5 term, if you can't tell by literally these two posters behind me, I love me some P5. Oh, excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry, my brain stopped for a second. I had it exactly, and then I had to fucking swallow, and then I guess I swallowed all of my cohesive thoughts. But to use that P5 term, essentially, it traps a person inside of their palace, and their shadow now takes control. You see a palace and a half in this episode. Or, I keep saying episode, I don't know why, in this show, in this season. You see a tiny bit of John, because instead of doing the whole thing of John going, Pyrrha, I suck, but I don't want you to help because I have to be the hero, and the whole shit of him just lying his way into Beacon. It's just, I suck, and I know I suck, and I hate that I'm not good enough. And that's how the nightmare gets to him. Like, it feeds on that doubt, on that negativity. It's a grim. And then does something with that, and then Team Juniper is able to get in there, because there's a huntsman, who deals specifically with nightmares, and her semblance... Okay, first off, her weapon is a dream catcher, and I just think that's neat as fuck. Her semblance is she can make coins, and she can take people and put them into someone's palace, and they can use the coins to, like, pay for decoys to distract monsters, and they can set up doorways to places they've already been. Like, it's very video gamey, and I kind of dug that. And it's really treated like a roguelike. Because, like, Juniper is able to take care of John really quickly, and the member of Team RWBY to get affected by the nightmare is Weiss, which is why it's Ice Qweendom. And every time I think of the title of this show, I don't think Queen is spelled Q-U, I think it's spelled Q-W, even though it's not, because if you could spell RWBY, R-W-B-Y, like, why didn't you spell Qweendom like that? Like, it feels like a really weird thing to get hung up on, but, like, in my head, it's spelled Q-W. Anyways, point. So, in this world, RWBY, I think it's at first RWBY goes in by herself, then she's not able to finish it in time, so she has to go out, and her progress is reset, but she understands the world a little better so she can get further. And then she goes back in with Blake and Yank, and then they have to reset, but they know the world better so they can go, like, this is a fucking roguelike. Which, I'm not really into roguelikes myself, but I get the appeal. I think that it sounds kind of cool. I think conceptually here, it's a fun idea, but it does kind of lead into this feels like it's taking a bit too long. Like, I get it, shit's gonna happen, and having to reset and shit. But the show just kind of felt like it was dragging. Not by a huge amount, but just enough for my interest to not quite be there as much as it should be. But there were things that really kept my interest. Like Weiss's palace. What is it? It's this big walled city, and on the outside are all the Faunus, because from her perspective, the Faunus and the White Fang are the enemy, because I have known so many people who have been hurt or killed because of the Dust Company, and it's the Faunus, it's the White Fang that do it. I have been raised to believe that they are my enemy, and as such, they are not allowed in my city. Weiss has had to live her life as a proper lady. And with all the shit going on with her family, especially her parents, she's had to grow up quickly. So, her inner child, and like that inner sense of innocence and joy and excitement and happiness, she locks up in prisons so they can't affect her. Also, Klein is represented there. So something I didn't realize is that Klein is supposed to be the Seven Dwarves. Apparently his full name translates to like 7 men or like 7 small people or some shit. So his name is almost literally the Seven Dwarves. While watching the show, I did realize that he goes through personality changes. I didn't realize there were 7 personalities, but I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, I mean, she's Snow White, so that makes sense. There's a point where Weiss submits to the nightmare, and she goes into a glass casket marked with an apple. I'm like, there's the Snow White imagery. Mirror, mirror, yeah, there's the Snow White imagery. Her mother is depicted as just this shadow on the wall. And the first time I saw her, my brain went, Kashida, Kashida, because it's just some Utna shit, and I kind of dug it. I think at one point, there was literally a pair of shadows on a wall whispering to each other, like, this really is some Utna shit. You can't hide that from me. Nobody turned into a car, though, although, because this is RWBY, the characters have to get fucking redesigns. When they're in the world, RWBY, Blake, and Yang all have, like, these winter clothes on, and Weiss is just cosplaying as Esteth from Akame ga Kill, and I kind of dig it. I think it looks cool as hell, but the first time I saw RWBY in, like, this snowboarder outfit, she has this red and white beanie on that just has RWBY written on it, and she is using Crescent Rose as a snowboard. I was like, okay. I'm only on episode 4. There's a lot of time left. This show is goated. Like, this shit alone of Ruby snowboarding with Crescent Rose makes the entire show worth it. This is wonderful. But her mom is a literal shadow on the wall that all it does is drink alcohol and mock her. And I'm like, yeah, that kind of makes sense, because her mom really isn't a part of her life anymore. She is just something there in the background, something looming, something lurking. Her father is the fucking ceiling that's just looking down on her, and is something that is always looming over her, always imposing and telling her, these are your responsibilities. You're a schnee. This is what a schnee has to do. You have to put away those things that make you a child. You have to be an adult. You have to be grown. There's a certain way you have to act. And if you don't act like that, if you aren't responsible the way a young lady should, you can't be happy. You can't inherit the company, blah, 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 blah. Like, that makes a lot of sense. Her brother Whitley he's a bat. I don't get it. I don't know if she sees him as a literal bloodsucker or a parasite, but the fact that he just kind of acts like a little minion, though, I'm like, no, that's kind of the way he's written, and I appreciated that. Though there is a line in the first episode, because the first episode of the show, it covers the white trailer, the black trailer, and then actually episode 1, and also there's Yang not doing too much in it. And, there's a line that Whitley says to her where it's something along the lines of like, no, like, I've always been watching over my sisters, or it's like, I always like watch my sisters and shit. And I'm like, that he doesn't get a lot, but he's written very well there, because you get the sense of the little brother who's a little shit that kind of wants to see his sister fail and is egging her on and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, it's like, no, like, I do care. I do look up to my sisters. I do want to be like my sisters, but I can't. Which is very much how he's written in Season 8, and I don't think I really said much about him in my Season 8 video, but the little bit they did with him and their mom, I really liked, especially the whole fucking Jurassic Park scene. And Winter is depicted as just a book. It is a book of judgment, which, again, to me kind of makes sense. Like, this is what Weiss compares herself to. This is what she judges. This is like the rubric she uses to judge herself, is Winter. That makes a lot of sense. I felt like a lot of those ideas were really clever. I really like Yang and RWBY's relationship in this season. Not just we're sisters, they're hanging out, they like each other and get along very well. But the way Yang is written, it's, I love my sister and I adore her, but maybe I adore her too much. Maybe I spoil her too much, I coddle her too much, and I don't let her be independent. Like, I remember I think episode 2 of Season 1. It's like, oh boy, that was 116 episodes, an entire 1 core anime and 2 specials ago. That was a fat minute ago. Holy shit. Where RWBY's like, cool, we can be on a team together and we can hang out and we can be friends. And Yang's like, I actually have a bunch of friends that have no faces. I'm going to hang out with them. Bye. And here, that genuinely kind of came across as like, sis, this is cool, but I got shit to do and people to hang out with, and I'm gonna go do that and prioritize that over you. I'll see ya. With a little bit of a slight hint of maybe it is to kind of let RWBY make her own friends. And here, that's explicitly what it is. She has a conversation with her dad before it, and he's like, yeah, if RWBY is gonna go there with her, like, look after her, of course, but give her some space. Make sure she has that space. Let her spread her wings. See if she can start to become more independent and become her own woman. And I really, really liked that. It made a lot of sense to me. And I felt like it made Yang a bit more likable in hindsight from that regard. Not that I ever really disliked Yang, but it's like, here's actually, like, this is what she's going through throughout the season. It's clearly not as deep as the shit Weiss is dealing with, but it was giving her something, and I liked it. RWBY is going through, weirdly enough, kind of the same arc she's going through in season 9. I am not cut out to be the leader. And while watching it, I was thinking to myself, that's right. She did go through this in season 1. This has been, honestly, a consistent theme of RWBY's character. And I want to make sure I say this right. I think it's not that RWBY is the most inconsistently written character, but I think she's the most dynamically written character of these main 4. In the first few seasons, she's very energetic, she's very excitable, she's like, I am here in Huntsman Hogwarts, and I just want to have a dang good time, prove myself to my new friends, to my sister, to Oz, and I want to stop the Torchman. And I think that's fine. But there is, at least in season 1, I don't think it's as much in season 2 and 3, but in season 1, there's kind of this lingering doubt of, am I as good as I think I am? Am I actually fit to lead these people who are older than me and presumably more experienced than me and probably more intelligent than me? Like, I don't know. Then comes season 4 and season 5, where she's trying to downplay her emotional state because she feels like, I need to be strong for my new team, for the junior trio. So, like, as the leader of Team Ranger, I have to be the glue, so I can't really emote. I can't show my emotions. So a lot of that joy and that energy, while it can still be there at times, is significantly downplayed. But it doesn't feel out of character. It feels like, no, this is character evolution. Then in season 6, she gets to a point where she stops taking people's shit. She's like, you know what? I am sick and tired of people treating me, my crew as a whole, but also me specifically, like I'm a stupid kid who doesn't know any better and can't take care of myself. Have I failed? Yes, I understand that. But I've also had successes. I've had fights. I've gotten out of them. Some of them I've just straight up won. Please, someone, give me a little bit of fucking credit here. We were able to go to, I led a team of people to Mistral, and none of them fucking died. And despite all the bullshit that happened there, and despite the fact that we really didn't get the relic under our own power, shout out to Raven Bronwyn, we still got the relic. We did exactly what we went there to do, and none of my people died. Instead, our numbers got bigger. We got an Oscar. I got my friends back. Was there someone else that joined the party? Off the top of my head now. It's like, John got his fucking semblance. Look at all the good shit that happened under my watch. I am tired of being underestimated. I am tired of not being taken seriously. We are going to fucking do this shit. And that continues into season 7. Then at the end of season 7, everything went to shit. And yeah, a decent chunk of that was your fault and your terrible decision making. And she takes that to heart, which leads to the characterization in season 8, which is magnified in season 9. She is a very dynamic character. Her character really does feel like it depends on the seasons or the arcs that you're watching. But I genuinely think it's well done. And it is really interesting to me that, yeah, the arc she has in season 9 isn't that different from an arc she was having in season 1. But the context is very different. And even the way it's executed is very different. In season 1, it's, I've got my doubts, but I'm going to do my best. And then in season 9, she drank the tea. Yikes. So just kind of so being able to revisit this earlier part of the character and seeing that it's familiar to the most recent things I've seen of the character, I thought was kind of neat and how much sense it made. Then there's Blake. I don't really know what to say about Blake. They kind of do some shit with her at the end, with her getting I was trying to say affected, afflicted, and inflicted, and infected all at the same time, and it came out as the blue. She gets possessed by her shadow. Let's say it like that. Which does lead to... I haven't really said much about the fights. I think the fights, for the most part, honestly, kind of okay. I think the recreation of RWBY fighting the dudes in the streets from episode 1 is pretty sick. I think the white trailer is pretty cool, too. There's a scene where Yang is fighting... Weiss's grandpa is named Nicholas, and he's like Santa. And something I didn't know until I was deep diving into the wiki is that her dad, Jacques, his last name is like Frost or something close to it. So it's Santa and Jack Frost. When you see her dad, he's wearing this big ass fucking Santa coat and shit. I'm like, okay. But they refer to him throughout this as Big Nicholas. And I was giggling every time they said it. And then at one point, Weiss basically gets a stand of Big Nicholas. And Yang fights it on her bike, and it was actually pretty cool. For the most part, I thought the fights were okay, but the Big Nicholas bike fight and then them fighting Shadow Blake, I thought was actually really sick. There is a good amount of focus on the ending of season 1 and like the fighting and... but like the arguments between Weiss and Blake about the Schnee Dust Company and the White Thing and the Faunus and Weiss's prejudices and her bigotry. And I do kind of like what they do with it in that other world. When it comes to RWBY and Yang, they are locked in a tower because they're in a different jail than... They call them the dummies and the sillies. And that's how Weiss describes, like, herself as a child. Like, those stupid emotions I'm not supposed to feel. But also the members of Team Juniper, even Pyrrha, they're the dummies and the sillies. And I was giggling every time. But Yang and RWBY are locked in a tower somewhere. It's like, these are things that are important to me, so I want to keep them safe. Blake is not. Blake is a Faunus, so she is not allowed in the city. And on the one hand, at first they're kind of interpreting that as like, oh, Blake doesn't mean enough to her to be in the city. She's not that precious. But then as they kind of dig a little deeper, like, no, the reason she's not allowed in the city because Weiss knows that would be a problem. No Faunus are allowed because Faunus have hurt me. They have hurt the people close to me. This is a Faunus I care about. I can't break the rules for her. She will not be safe, so I can't let her in. And like, yeah, I thought it was consistently interesting when you're just focusing on Weiss's psychology. Like what season 9 does for RWBY, Ice Qweendom is trying to do for Weiss. I say trying because I don't think it works quite as well, but that's because I think season 9 is just... But I think this does a really good job. What are some other things I wanted to say about it? Oh, one thing I will say is I did watch the show subbed. It was on dub by default, and I was down to watch it dubbed, and then after just the first couple minutes, my brain went, nope. These designs don't work with these voices, because I am used to the 3D models, and I've seen redesigns, a completely different art style. That to me looks like RWBY, and like that. These voices fit these kinds of models. This voice does not fit this model. I think it's just for me, when it comes to dub versus sub, generally speaking, it's whichever version I watched first. There are some shows where I've watched both languages and it's fine. To me, Dragon Ball was kind of an acquired taste, but I had to do it for the Tournament of Power. And by the end, I'm like, no. I like the Japanese voices as well. I watched Madoka Magica in English and Japanese. I've seen Spirited Away in both English and Japanese. there are some things I can do both. For the most part, it's whatever I find first. So for me, 3D RWBY, I have heard it in English first. This is how it's supposed to sound. But now seeing the 2D models, I'm like, no, this is a weird dichotomy and it's not matching up. I'm just going to watch the sub. And honestly, I really like the Japanese voices as well. My one issue from a pure production standpoint, and this is something in both the Justice League specials as well, is I don't think I ever heard Casey Lee Williams sing anything. And I'm like, that's wrong. That feels like, it genuinely feels like an integral part of RWBY's identity is missing there. I don't mind that Ice Qweendom had its own opening, aside from just like, this will be the day. I think that's kind of cool, and I think the opening's like really catchy. I like it. I wish the visuals weren't just like a clip show and it was just its own original shit, but that is kind of what it is. But I would have liked a Casey song in there somewhere. Like, there's a scene where Mirror Mirror is being sung, but it's not by her, and I still think it's good, but it is just, like I said, a part of the show's identity to me is lost when she doesn't have a song, and it's like the one thing I don't like about the second Justice League crossover. I talked about that. I don't feel like I have much to say about Juniper. Like I said, they did John differently in terms of his arc, and it made me not the way he's written in season 1 and the way his arc is done, no pun intended, John arc, I genuinely don't like it. It makes me not like him. Didn't have this problem in this, and he's being John. He's doing, especially early John, he's doing his best. He's getting clowned, but he's still doing his best anyways, and that's why we love him. Pyrrha, they still bring up the joke about her being on the fucking cereal mascot, and I appreciated that. She's actually the one that sings Mirror Mirror, and I thought that was kind of neat. I could be wrong about this. I think her voice actress, both the Japanese voice actress and the English voice actress, sings the song. I don't think it was the same voice in both. I could be wrong about that, though. Ren doesn't really do much of anything, and Nora's kind of a dick. Like, I feel like, especially in the early seasons, I thought Nora's energy and the dumb shit that she would say was just really fun and really funny. And then in the later seasons, like, I don't know, I just don't find her as endearing as I used to. But some of her character shit, depending on what it is, some of it I think works well, some of it doesn't. Here, just like almost every line she had, she was just kind of shit-talking to people. She's like, man, John's real shit, isn't he? I'm like, that doesn't feel like something Nora would say. I don't know. This was a little wrong. The slingshot fight did happen. I don't think it was as cool as it happened in the original show. Oh, there is this one scene where it's implying that RWBY is now also getting infected by the nightmare. I'm like, ooh, RWBY's gonna meet her shadow self. This is gonna be interesting. Again, we kind of got that in season 9. How is this gonna look in season 1? And it's the fucking Ava congratulations circle, and I just appreciated that. She didn't really get to meet her shadow self, though. I was looking forward to that, but it didn't happen. Speaking of shadow, so the way the nightmare actually works is when you are, as it's like when you're facing it and you're trying to fight it, whatever you're fighting is more like an illusion, and it's actually hiding in your shadow. I just thought that was kind of fucking cool. There's a bit at the end of the season that made me laugh. And it's after they're all successful, like, all right, we saved the team. We've learned a bit about each other. Like, our group social link has gone up. You know, our team motto from now on is communication. And we're going to communicate with each other. We're going to communicate well with each other. I'm like, that's adorable. Season 4, Blake would like a word with all of you. Or I guess she wouldn't like a word because she didn't say shit. Season 9, RWBY would like a word with all of you because she couldn't communicate shit. Hell, all of y'all would like a word with Iron because he couldn't fucking communicate to him. Like, I was like, man, I don't know if that, like, I know this is soft canon. It's like, that might be why this canon's a little soft. They didn't really adhere to that group rule of theirs, did they? Also, I got to see Sun and Penny. Sun's not a character that I absolutely love, but I like the dude, and having not seen him for 4 seasons, he's in the very start of season 6, but he's not in the majority of it, and then he's not in 7 through 9 or the Justice League specials. So seeing Sun for a little bit, I'm like, that's neat. I kind of like this dude. I'm happy to see him again. I was happy to see Penny. It wasn't for very much. Like, she does a cool thing, and it happens off screen. I'm like, that's shitty. But I got to see Penny again, and at this point, Penny is easily one of my favorite characters in the show. Shout out to her in season 7 and 8. And just the impact that she still has in season 9, even though she's not there. Again, RWBY's eulogy of Penny made me cry, like 100%. So I was happy to see her, and her being paired with Yang for a scene or two. I was like, has she really interacted with Yang? I don't think they've ever interacted one-on-one. I kind of dug it, though. But, that was Ice Qweendom. I think this is easily the shortest RWBY video I've made, and I didn't really expect it to be a long one either. These are my thoughts on Ice Qweendom. I think the idea for the nightmare and everything is really cool. I think the way they execute it works as well. But like I said earlier, as weird as it feels to say, despite only being a one-cour show, it feels somehow too long. It doesn't quite overstay its welcome. But I feel like if it was maybe a bit shorter, a bit tighter, I think it would have worked really, really well. Maybe it's just like, especially after watching Justice League 2, maybe instead of it being a one-cour anime, it could have just worked as a film. Like, if this was an hour and a half, maybe 2.5 hours, probably not, about like 2 hours or so, I mean, you probably wouldn't do a lot of the retelling of season 1. You would just kind of assume someone watching this has at least seen season 1 or knows the basics of how RWBY works. I think this probably would have been a little bit better, at least for me. But I am glad I saw it. Like I said, I don't know when I'm going to do the RWBY Justice League 2 video. Hopefully that'll be Monday. Then I can do my tier list and finally be done with this ding-dang show until season 10.